Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. Today's video is our look at the Fire Emblem Lost Heroes rerun that is happening right now in Dragalia Lost. I'm going to be playing the Alberian front, which is the defensive battle mode, on Lunatic difficulty and then on hard difficulty. And I'm using a budget, free-to-play friendly team here. My idea is that even if you're brand new to the game, this event lasts for a total of 3 weeks, so there should be plenty of time to be able to build up a team with around this level of power. I'm using only story characters plus Alphonse, and I'm only using free dragons that you obtain from the story, so there's really no gacha elements here. One of the big things with this event is knowing which paths to run on, and there's different approaches you can take, so I'm just showing you what I find to be very effective for me. Once you kind of get into a pattern with this, it's pretty easy to repeat over and over, but this time around this event is solo only, and it's become easier to grind out the valor that you need, but it still takes quite a while. So for the Fire Emblem Lost Heroes event, the rewards go up to 10 million Valor. Those are just rewards for accumulating Valor, which you get by playing quests in the Fire Emblem Heroes event. And then for playing any other types of quests in the game, you're going to get basically badges that you can use in a treasure trade for playing harder quests in the Fire Emblem Heroes event, like this Lunatic difficulty Alberian front. You're also going to get great badges, which can be traded within a treasure trade as well. So we're about to enter Wave 3 here, and this is the one that trips up the most people. What I find is that you really want to rush and make a beeline right for these Cyclops enemies. These Cyclops enemies can attack your gate from far away. If they're not near you, they'll just go for your gate instead, so you really want to try to take those out as quickly as possible. I got a little bit sloppy with rolling back and not really being able to focus on the Cyclops. When you take out both of them, these wolves spawn. So some players probably prefer to take out the Cyclops on the left last so that they're a little closer to the wolves. But as long as you get their attention before they attack the gate, you should be able to get through this without the gate taking any damage. We'll look at the exact team that I'm using after this, so don't worry about that if you're trying to monitor what's going on with respect to the team. The key thing with this is just being pretty aggressive and proactive with your dragon usage. Having a healer helps if you have weaker units. One of the things that makes this accessible, even if you haven't been playing the game a long time, is that HP hasn't really gotten super power crept as far as weapons. It's pretty static. Even if you have really strong weapons, those will be able to clear enemies faster, but you're not necessarily going to be able to survive a lot easier. So the main way that having really good endgame weapons helps you on this is just clearing quickly, not necessarily your ability to survive or do it at all. So Ronzel got a little bit damaged earlier, but luckily we've brought along Cleo here to help us. And I'm going to play a little conservative on the Shadow Knight, not cast my skills on cooldown. The Shadow Knight is summoned because we cleared the waves early enough, and I believe it's with 6 minutes and 30 seconds left on Lunatic. And the Shadow Knight is Shadow Element, so having Light Adventurers helps, but you can kind of use anything. In Dragalia Lost, your characters are always going to do at least neutral damage against Shadow enemies, and light enemies will do extra damage, but some of the other element characters, like if you summoned any of the Fire Emblem characters off the banner and decided to mana spiral them, those are also great choices. So we've almost whittled down the Shadow Knight, still playing a little conservatively, but luckily our healer, Cleo, is keeping us safe. And once we clear this out, we're going to go through and face off against the boss. So I decided to use a Gala Cleo helper for this. I also considered using a Gala Alex. The main reason I want a helper here, and I think the challenge for a lot of people, is going to be clearing those Cyclopses quickly before they damage your gates. And so having a Shadow Element helper is kind of nice because those Cyclopses are light element. However, you could just use, a healer helper. You could use a helper to round out whatever your team might be lacking. And Although I'm just using story characters, when you do this yourself, you know, you can do it however you like. Use characters you've summoned, use story characters, whatever it may be. But it's pretty reasonable to build and achieve this, despite this now being solo only and not available in co-op. Of course, for more enfranchised players, I think not having co-op eliminates a lot of the fun of this event that people remember from last year. So I do think it's a downgrade. You could always play solo if you wanted to, because even when the event ran last year, you could start a co-op room, but just not let anyone in the room and initiate the gameplay before anyone joined. So effectively doing a solo run. So it is a downgrade. We have access to less content or less ways to play it than before. But you can see that we got a pretty sizable 80k or so valor out of the 10 million that you want to try grind up over the course of 3 weeks. So you don't have to play this super frequently if you're getting 80 to 100,000 valor. And I'll show my setup. It's not too invested as far as buying some of those event worm prints that increase your valor intake. But I think something like this is pretty reasonable. Do this a couple times a day to the end of the event and you should be fine. It's a lot to play. It's a lot to repeatedly play with no auto battle, I will admit, but hopefully this type of setup can work for you at a very minimum. So I'm going to show off the characters. I do have some augments on them. You are getting augments from the event and other things you play in Dragalia Lost, like Void Battles. Yuden and Cleo, I have Mana Spiraled, but I think you can do this just fine without them Mana Spiraled. The main thing I want to show here is these Chimeratech Weapons. These are currently available in the Flame, Wind, and Shadow elements, and these are very, very strong weapons. Really one of the strongest weapons you can craft early in the game. On Alphonse, because there's not any light element Chimeratech weapons right now, I just use the free sword, Folkvanger, that they give you for playing the event, and I'm using the story dragons on all of these characters. If you have access to gacha dragons, that's only going to make your team even more powerful here. And the other thing I should point out is to craft these Chimera weapons, you're going to need to unlock Void Battles. To do that, you need to beat Chapter 7 of the game's story. So that should be your priority if you're brand new to the game, is going through the story, beating Chapter 7. That will let you unlock Void Battles. And by facing off against Void Manticores first, you can craft these types of weapons that have Slayer Strength and Astral Bane. Those weapons are a prerequisite for crafting the Chimera weapons that have such good stats. And so these Void Manticore weapons are what I'm going to use, Void Manticore weapons are what I'm going to use to show the very hard or hard difficulty. Lunatic, we use the Chimera weapons. For hard, let's use the Manticore. And one is kind of a stepping stone to the other, so by crafting those Manticore weapons, or crafting I always get them mixed up. The Manticore weapons first, you'll have those prereqs done so that you can eventually craft the Chimera ones. So we're in the Alberian front hard. This map's a little different. This one is similar to the beginner difficulty map if you're having trouble with that, but it's now set at nighttime. More waves of enemies are going to come more quickly. And really, even though our weapons are not particularly powerful, one thing to note about these Astral Bane Manticore weapons is that they also have this ability called Slayer Strength. That ability increases the strength of your character for every enemy they defeat. It's perfect for content like this where you're fighting a lot of small foes, and that same ability is a passive in Ronzel's kit. So that's one of the reasons I've brought along Ronzel here, but anyone from your story group can work. Another reason I brought Ronzel is because Wind, like I said, is one of the elements where Chimera weapons are now available. But yeah, if you want to try Elisan, Alex, even Lakshi, if you have her, any characters like that, or characters you happen to summon, if you're watching this later and the other event has already started, because that starts 10 days into this one, then you might have access to Sharina as well, and you could probably put her on your team and do pretty well with her. I haven't covered Alphonse and Veronica's trial in this video, but I will make another video to show how to do those with budget comps. Those are going to be ones that, honestly, it's going to be easier for you to do in co-op if you are completely new to the game. The patterns are pretty hard to learn, and if you don't have a lot of gear, they are punishing. You can get one-shot by some of the moves in both of those trials, so they're kind of like a mini High Dragon trial in a way. It's just that on those, really having strength weapons or high strength weapons does make it significantly easier. So those are a little bit harder to do on a budget, but certainly the Alberian front, which is where you're going to want to do most of your grinding for this event, you can pretty much clear with any characters you like. You saw the first time we cleared, we did miss one bonus, which was for clearing in 360 seconds or less. So we weren't quite getting the full point allocation for Valor, but honestly, we're still getting enough Valor, and we're able to use enough of the free prints that you get for the event from the treasure trade that we didn't have to spend any extra resources to try purchase those using Eldwater from the Wormprint shop. So I think that's a pretty good compromise to be able to clear most of the conditions in the quest, be able to get a good amount of Valor, clear with everyone surviving, not taking damage to the gate. But the stronger your team is in terms of the damage output, and the better you get with your routing as you repeatedly play this, obviously the more you can bring that down to the point where it is possible, of course, to clear it within that time frame. That was something that I remember from last year being a little challenging even in co-op at the time, so probably easier now in single player because our units are so much stronger. But as for my feelings on things, I think this event is pretty grindy. 10 million Valor is still a lot, but compared to last year, they have increased the amount you get every time you run the content. Not having co-op changes the feel of the event a lot, so I do hope that Fire Emblem Part 2 brings us some type of co-op content, maybe brings back defensive battles with new co-op and new types of maps. That would be potentially pretty fun. In terms of who I think we might see for Part 2, I'm hoping that we can see, besides Sharina, Anna, maybe Bruno if they're going to stick close to Fire Emblem Heroes. Maybe we'll get to see as well Loki, since Loki has such a prominent role in the story of Part 1. Just for that reason, I wouldn't mind her making an appearance, even if she's not my favorite character. However, for me, the dream scenario might be to have an actual dragon, like let's say Tiki. I would have loved for somebody who has a connection to Marth to appear, and I think Tiki, young Tiki, would fulfill that. They could also maybe do Lucina and kind of play off the masked Marth, regular Marth connection. And then my pie in the sky is if they actually introduce the house leaders from 3 houses. That would be really, really sweet as well. Occupy a good banner or 2 with them. I don't know if they're willing to do that because they kind of need each other. Like, I don't think you can just introduce one of the house leaders and have that be as fun. But I guess that's my speculation for Part 2, and this is my first look at Part 1 with hopefully some helpful budget clears. Hope you enjoyed the gameplay today. That is going to do it for this video, everyone. Let me know what you think of the event, how you're feeling about the lack of co-op. I know a lot of people are kind of upset about that, and your suggestions for what Part 2 could bring. Otherwise, though, that is going to do it. Thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.